very much. It's good that I get applause before I say anything. So also have to admit I'm a bit of a dinosaur, and the material I mostly work with is actually stone. And in fact, whenever I split a piece of my material open, I'm the first mammal to see it. It's going to be sort of quite an alternative view, I think. I'm from Scotland, and I worked originally as a community artist in the Gorbals for 3 years, and then set up Glasgow Sculpture Studios with 5 other sculptors. And no sooner had I done that than I ended up running away to Japan. So I had a space bar. That's okay. This is one of the first pieces I made in stone whilst I was still in Scotland, and it was part of a project I organised in Glasgow, where we were using recycled blocks from a building demolished by Miller Homes before they built new flats. And I was trying to sort of some awareness of the environment and the idea that, of course, we've lost the continuity of the stream. This is one of the earliest pieces I made in Japan in collaboration with a Japanese sculptor called Hironori Katagiri. It's a port city where, of course, the influence of the moon on the tide is very important. So we chose the theme of the moon cycles, called it Watch the Moon Comes Down, and the idea of having some sense of movement on this very busy street. The project, despite the fact that Katagiri and I argued all the way through the project, we then decided to get married. Nobody who'd been working on the project with us could believe that we were actually going to do this. And also, I was slightly unbelieving of my mother's choice of wedding dresses. Traditionally white for the reasons of showing your purity, so what was a red tartan check telling everyone? This is another piece that I made in Japan, actually whilst I was very heavily pregnant with our first child. It's called Moon Echo because there's an observatory up on the hill, and then it's surrounded by sea on this peninsula. And I wanted the combination, the relationship between the stars and the sea. This is, again, it's all my work is about relationships, so relative perceptions. Of course, being a Scot in Japan, very aware of our different views on each other's culture. So by twisting the frame that you might get more often in digital technology into 3-dimensional space and the relationship between 3 elements, how that then changes your perceptions and your perspectives as you move around. This is the process of making. So it all came from one piece of stone, cutting my stone very meanly in order to save money, then drilling it out. Then you get like that, and then grinding all of that down. This is me working away, and this is my lovely husband, Kata, helping me polish. This is what it feels like very often after you finish making a piece. And this was actually a cheat. It wasn't just after it had melted. I actually posed it like that in order to express more how I felt at the time. But it's still, I mean, it's a privilege to work with stone, although it can be fairly nerve-wracking the first time you make a cut into something so gorgeous. This is another piece on the same theme, but with just 2 elements, so it was more like a couple. And this is for a housing development in central Tokyo in a place called Gotanda. And actually, when I went back to try and check recently if it needed cleaning or anything, I was thrown off the site because I didn't have permission to be there, apparently, although it's in public. So this is another piece that was in collaboration with Katagiri. It was for a library, and they had a problem with this concrete wall because the neighbour wouldn't sell his land to the library, and so it had to retain the hillside where they'd excavated. And the architect wanted us to give something that gave more of a sense of entrance to the library. This is sort of partly, it was actually just an installation piece for an exhibition that we organised, and it was up in the attic, so I couldn't really get stone up there, and I also didn't have time. I only actually had 12 hours after I arrived in Japan to put the installation up. So I planned it all quite carefully and then cut it out of a kind of corrugated plastic material. But it also shows the way I think of working out ideas for stone, of sort of working with anything from little strips of paper to polystyrene. And then this is the kind of idea that can evolve from that. This is a piece made in onyx that was shown in Mellestone House down in the Borders. And I like the idea, it's kind of one thread, which is why I use the title Ariadne. Again, still on the Greek mythology theme. This was the idea of Aphrodite, of showing at Mellestone House, which was neoclassical. I was trying to think, well, okay, what would neoclassical be like? So taking those sort of ancient themes and trying to update them into our own age and something that was relevant. So there's another piece in the same series called Athena, which is one of a pair with Athena and Hermes, which are actually now in the Parfoot building at Stirling University, thanks to Jane Cameron, who's the art curator of the collection there. They're on loan. So if you'd like to go along and see some of my work, and there's more of Katagiri's there, he's got 15 pieces there. So I'm not showing you any of those, you have to go and look for yourself. This is another piece which is at Stirling University in front of the Cottrell building. And this is actually based on a media strip, which is a fascinating piece of mathematics, which I'm sure you probably all know about. If you take a piece of paper and put it around in a loop, or then twist it, you get an endless loop. So although it's sort of one piece, it's still in a lot of ways about relationships. This is a public art piece I made in Yokohama, just outside Tokyo, where we wanted to have something for benches for people to sit on. So these two pieces are mine, and these two pieces are Katagiri's. So again, it was a kind of collaboration, but we both made our separate pieces, but in consideration of what each other was going to be doing. These are drawings, again, to show the way I sort of think and work. This is Plan A, and then what was finally accepted was Plan F for a site in Otemachi, which is bang in the city centre of Tokyo. And even Plan F had to then be altered once I actually got the material and started thinking about it. So the idea of this was Celtic key forms translated into three-dimensional space so that people could sit and interact with them. The site's still actually a building site because the other side of the site is being developed, so I had to put a composite slide to give you some impression of it. There are actually 5 pieces on the one side. And this is the architect checking it on the day of setting. This is another piece that I made after the tsunami for a hospital, which was the first building to be restored in Kamaishi City after the tsunami. And I wanted to inspire the idea of using the golden proportion, or good proportions, in rebuilding. So I took the idea of the Fibonacci sequence, which relates to pi, and the golden mean, and I designed the gate to explain as a grid for that. And then the 7-day reliefs, so the benign side of nature, they start at Sunday in Japan, so sun, moon, fire planet, water planet, plant planet they have for Thursday. And Friday again is golden day, so the golden mean. And then Saturday they have earth, so it's like mountains but also the steps towards recovery. This is one of my latest pieces, where is the fourth dimension, which is going to be moved on loan to Stirling University on the 1st of May. So you'll be able to go and see that one again. And this is a new series of work where I'm playing with the idea of not only 2 dimensions into 3 dimensions, but where is the 4th dimension? So, thank you very much.